Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As Richard said, I grew up, I'm an engineer and an accountant by training, and I grew up in my professional life in the motor industry. 10 or 11 years ago, I held what a lot of people thought was the best job in the British motor industry. I was a managing director of BMW. We had just enjoyed 4 record years of growth. We'd increased profitability by 500%. And I was bored to tears. I was absolutely bored to tears. And when I looked outside the window, I saw this internet thingy coming. And I tried to get my company to understand that this was going to change the way we did business. And nobody wanted to listen. Nobody wanted to listen to me and share with me my enthusiasm for this funny thing that was coming that none of us really understood. So I quit. I walked out and I started a dot-com business. And I heard all sorts of stories. I'd had a nervous breakdown. I'd been caught with my fingers in the till. I was shagging the chairman's wife and making a bad job of it. It's possible. I heard all these stories. People couldn't understand that I wanted to go out and play in this dot-com world. And I didn't understand the dot-com world either. No idea what it meant, where it was coming from, what it would mean. But I've been asked to come along today and share with you some of my experiences of the last 10 years of walking out, starting a dot-com business. That business was very successful. It's running today. I don't think there's anybody in the room from that company. We sold it a couple of years ago for a number of hundreds of millions of pounds. And it was great fun. It was a great ride. And I'm now involved with a number of businesses in the technology space where we're trying to move the industry forward. We're trying to make change. We're trying to share our passion, our belief that there's a different way of dealing with a customer. You know, the press have been saying for a long time that technology is going to change the automotive sector. This survey here said that by 2010, dealers will only retail half of the cars sold. You just heard from Richard. 41% of people would buy a car online if they could. You can't yet. Not really, not really. Not in the way you should be able to do. This survey was published in June 2002, and the expectation that the industry would adopt this technology and really fly forward. Well, it didn't really happen. It never really moved in the way that any of us expected it to. So what I want to share with you in the next half an hour or so are what I believe are the 3 key drivers to the changes in the sector. They are changing social pressures. They are the pressures on automotive retailing, because we don't start from zero. The beauty of starting a dot-com business is you walk into an empty room and you start a dot-com business. The automotive sector has huge investment in fixed asset, huge investment in technology, massive investment in new vehicles, in support, in processes, and all of that needs to be taken into account if you're going to move forward. But then critically getting close to the customer, understanding the customer has a different expectation of convenience, of the support, of the kind of relationship that they want to enjoy with this product and service that the industry is offering. Well, let's look at the first one, changing social pressures. Technology is an enabler. You could say that's all it is. You know, the great oil boom in the States of many, many tens of years ago came about because of the railroad. You could actually get there and take the oil out of the ground and transport it. Urban development, because of the car. So technology is actually an enabler to changes. 1950s, well, it was the era when 60 years ago, you really didn't have access to the information that you needed to make a choice. So you would go into a car showroom and the great salesman would tell you which car was the right one for you, because they knew, hey mate, this is the car for you. Perfect, look at it, big engine, shiny wheels, away you go. Era of telling. Then came the television. So for the first time, people started to understand that actually there was competition out there. Actually, there were other vehicles that I could consider. And so I had to sell my product against the competition. Then real choice. The telephone took off. I look around the room today, and you're all young people. I'm an old man. I remember when we got our first phone. It's not that long ago. I remember in our house not having a telephone. Today, 1.5 billion fixed lines, and goodness knows how many mobile phones. But the telephone was a big step forward. Let your fingers do the walking. Use the phone to explore the opportunities in the market. Came into the 80s. People wanted what they wanted, and they wanted it now. We had the PC, which was great. You could do some computing, but it didn't talk to anything. You could process at your desk. Then came cable TV, satellite TV, which again gave some kind of communication and choice, allowing people to understand what was really out there. What could I can select what I want to watch. Wow, that's a big step forward. I want to watch something about cars. Wow, that's a bigger step forward. Then came the last decade. And at last, people were connected. Communities started to develop. We got email, fire and forget. Today, 2 billion email addresses. It's quite astonishing. How did we deal with life before we had email? I have no idea. Look at the last 10 years, though. Look at the kind of development we've seen. The first communities really developed around shared interests, music, the iPod, 10 billion songs downloaded a year. It's amazing. Then the BlackBerry. How many of us today carry a BlackBerry in our pocket? How could we deal without it? You know, the great thing about the BlackBerry is it frees us up to have even more spare time. Yeah, sure. Absolutely. 600 million units out there in the marketplace. And then, as Richard said, the iPad didn't exist. You know, a couple of years ago, we didn't have one. Today, I watch people with an iPod and I wonder, what are you doing with that? What are you actually doing with it? I know it's a great tool, I understand that, but what are you doing with it? And then I watch my kids and the community that they live in, they live through their iPad. It's quite astonishing. So those changes and the rate of those changes has got faster and faster and faster. Well, how does that apply to automotive retailing? Well, I started by looking back 60 years. 60 years ago, a showroom looked like this. You had a showroom with some cars on display. You had a workshop. You had some salesmen. And today, we've moved on. 60 years later, it looks like this. It's a showroom with a workshop and some salesmen and a lot of stock. The reason for this stock, well, there are two theories. One is if we keep pushing and pushing and pushing stock into the market, it will keep selling. I don't happen to believe that, but it is a theory. The greater force behind this stock is the fact that we're trying to offer the consumer choice. You can now have X million different versions of a Mercedes. Million. Not tens or thousands, but million. If you take the standard Mercedes option list, you could build more than 1 million different cars. It's incredible. And the trouble is, people do that. And so one of the challenges for the automotive sector is how do we create consumer choice without filling the pipe up with stock cars? And it's not something that they've ever yet done successfully. So it's very challenging. The trouble is, the motor industry has got this enormous investment in fixed assets. Many of you may recognize this wonderful showroom. Apologies to anybody in the room from Audi. I could have shown a number of other brands up here. It's just that this one happens to strike me every time I drive past it on my way into town, and I think, what a bloody waste of money. What a waste of money. 45 million euros, allegedly, for that piece of real estate. As somebody said to me the other day, you know what, for 45 million euros, I could get Keira Knightley and Colin Farrell standing at the traffic lights at Earl's Court handing out invitations to buy our cars. It's just a phenomenal investment in real estate. Now, of course it's a branding statement, of course it is. But next to it is a Mercedes branding statement that's grown up in response to this. And we have to ask ourselves, does this really provide service to the customer? Is this really what the customer's looking for? And I would argue that today the answer to that is no. But the industry is struggling to get away from that. People want cars. People like the freedom, the convenience, the security, the safety, the flexibility that a car gives to them. Even if you look at this, you know, just take a look at this. This is the floor space, the footprint needed to transport the same number of people using 3 different forms of transportation. A bus, far and away the most efficient. Bicycle, far and away the most consumer-friendly, terms of green or carbon emissions, and the car. But we won't give up our cars. We really don't want to give them up and move to an alternative form of transport. So how do we provide people with a relationship with the industry that allows them to enjoy their car, but at the same time meets the needs of a growing population on what feels like a shrinking planet? Well, some changes have started to take place. This chart, and it is 2008 to 2009, and the reason it's 2008 to 2009 is that's when the big change took place. And what this is showing are the changes in sales volume for different sizes of cars. So you could basically say at the bottom of this chart are the big cars and the sports cars, and at the top of this chart are the small cars, the micro cars, the compact cars. Now this covers the 5 top European countries 2008 to 2009. As you can see, this is 2009 to 2008. So there's a big reduction in big cars and an increase in small cars. Now, you can argue it's the economy. What I'm arguing is, if you look at sales since then, what has improved has been sales overall, but slowly. Economies are recovering slowly. But the shift to small cars has happened and seems to be permanent. So people are prepared to move to smaller cars. We still want our convenience, but we want a smaller car. Well, that's fine. But that's a challenge for the automotive sector because smaller cars, smaller price, smaller profit. That's a challenge when you have that kind of real estate to support. People will tell you that hybrids are coming and the world is going to be different. Yes, hybrids are coming, different drive technologies are coming, electric cars are coming, no question. But that's really just tinkling at the edges. Because those cars will still need support, they will still need servicing, they will still need an automotive community behind them to keep them on the road. So my argument is, whether it's hybrid technology, or whether it's petrol technology, or whether it's other technology, it doesn't matter. In terms of the argument of the consumer choice and the consumer relationship, that doesn't matter. What matters is the way that people are thinking, the way that people are selecting their car, the car that they buy and drive. That's different. That relationship is different. People are driving fewer miles. Sometimes it doesn't feel like it. It feels like you're in the car for a longer time. Well, actually you are, because average speed is reducing as well. But if you extend that, people are driving fewer miles. Again, that's a real challenge for the automotive sector, because when I drive lots of miles, I need my car servicing. Therefore, I take it to a dealer. Therefore, the dealer creates revenue. Therefore, he can support his real estate. The upshot of that is this chart here. This is what's called service absorption. I know you're all technology-based people, and there's other guys and girls from the automotive retail, but I don't want to bore you with it. But service absorption is the ability of a car dealership to cover its service work, its workshop, as a percentage of the profit it generates. So you should be able, with service work, to cover 100% of the cost of the real estate. When I was in the industry, back here, we targeted to cover 100% of the cost of the building through the sale of workshop sales, service and parts. Then anything that we made from selling cars was profit. Well, that becomes a challenge when you look, 2007, that's dropped down to 60%, and it continues to drop. In other words, there isn't enough profit in service and parts to cover the cost of the real estate. That's despite the fact that the motor industry sort of has, careful how I use this word, but sort of has a monopoly on parts pricing, even though the EU is pushing very hard to break that and create alternative sources of parts. The manufacturer is still in a very strong position in terms of parts pricing. And despite the fact that now if you go into a major city centre, I was explaining to somebody earlier on, I'm paying £125 an hour to have my car serviced now. Well, to a guy from the industry, that's bonkers, but that's what it costs. So the model, I have to ask the question, is the model sustainable? We can't cover the overheads. We're driving labour rates up to the point where people are saying, hey, you know what, no thanks. So we have to find a different way. We have to find a different way because when we talk to the customer, their expectations don't fit the old model. People still want to drive. People want to drive and enjoy their cars. But can the current infrastructure carry this kind of volume? China has gone from effectively nothing, no new cars effectively, 10, 12 years ago, to last year 13.5 million new cars sold. The highest, biggest market in the world, from nothing to the biggest in the world in 10 years. The BRIC countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, are growing at such a rate that this kind of phenomenon can well be imagined. It's not sustainable. China grew 45% last year. It's not sustainable, and yet there's 25% of the world's population have never seen a car. 25%, never seen a car. So when they get on the bandwagon as well, or when they get into the car as well, where do we go? Well, we use technology. Because if you look at some of the challenges in driving, the frustration is about our inability to cover the miles we want to go, to get to where we want to be, to reduce carbon emissions because the cars are sitting still in traffic jam. That's really not good for the environment. So the studies that have been done to understand why and how you improve road transportation systems come up with these kind of ideas. There are non-recurring reasons for traffic jams. And, you know, they are special events, Google Think at Hurlingham. They are working zones. We've got the road up again. They are bad weather. OK, we're not in control of that. Traffic incidents, there appear to be more and more. But then look at the others. Poor traffic light signaling, poor signaling. Hey, shouldn't we be able to resolve that in today's in this day and age when we've got access to more computer technology than we know what to do with? And bottlenecks. Roads which are badly designed. Roads which are designed to create these issues. Well, you know what? We can deal with that stuff. What's going to happen is you are going to see changes to road signaling. You are going to see changes to road design. You are really going to see changes to the information systems which are available to drivers. You have navigation systems today which can give you the fast route, the slow route, the green route, which are dynamic as far as traffic is concerned, which can direct you around jams. Well, that's going to become more and more prevalent. We are going to move to the point where there are information sources within the car which at times will take over the control of the car. You already, happens now, except often you don't know it. The second biggest lifesaver in vehicle technology at the moment is, anyone want to tell me? The first is the three-point seatbelt. Anyone want to tell me what the second biggest lifesaver is in vehicle technology? Not airbags. ESP. The car's ability to brake different corners or provide power on different corners so that you don't get into a skid. You don't even realize it's doing it for you. The car gets you through the bend, you don't even notice the car's just helped you out of a very difficult situation. So there's going to be more and more control from within the car. Automatic braking, radar systems. Radar system, why is that clever? It's only infrared. Slow you down in anticipation of a bend coming up. The computer in the car knows the bend, it knows the radius of the bend, it knows how quickly you can get through the bend or should be able to get through the bend, so it'll slow you down. So this kind of information is going to be provided within the car. Outside the car, it's already looking like this. This is not imagination. This is the M42 around Birmingham. This kind of control is in place now. If anybody uses that road regularly, you will have seen that over the past 10 years or so, they've gradually upgraded the road. They've increased runoff space. They use the what do you call it? The hard shoulder as a lane during busy times. And all of these controls are computer linked, and it determines how you use that road. This is going to become more and more prevalent. And the question is, how far does it go? You know, do we get to the point where actually the car-to-car communication, which is coming, this car-to-car communication means that it becomes almost impossible to have an accident, because the computer will make sure that you don't end up in the same space as the bus at the same time. Journey planning, advising you when to leave your house in order to get to your work in the most convenient time, with the least stress, with the least hassle, with the least fuel usage. Yes, it will happen. Do you have to book a slot time, like aeroplanes, you know? If you miss your slot time at 10 to 8, oh, shucks. Well, you might as well get back in the shower for 20 minutes because your next slot is 8:15. Will it happen? Well, it's not beyond imagination. Of course, to make all of this happen needs clear leadership. And when I look for leadership in the industry, I look to the SMMT, Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders. So before I put this little presentation together, I looked at what they said about technology. This is from the SMMT website. Anybody here from the SMMT, I apologize, but this is on your website. E-business has been around in the automotive industry since the 1970s. The phrase, however, has only recently been adopted into common business language. The way industry does business will change with current technology. Yes! Fantastic! Technology! Oh, for goodness sake. 2011. The way industry does business will change. Yeah, guys, look outside the window. You know? Look! Go talk to somebody under 30 years of age. Go look at who and how people communicate with each other. Who are the most influential people in the world? My kids. You and my kids. You're the most influential people in the world. Because now, you are the communities. Crowdsourcing, community, information, data transfer. Just imagine, just go back one. Just to go back two, actually. Just imagine the data that this will create. Just imagine the power of the intelligence, the information that this kind of data will create. I spent the last 10 years of my life running Europe's biggest automotive data company. Hugely powerful, hugely valuable. Our data was embedded in every system in the automotive industry. Imagine what you can do with this stuff. It's dynamite, it's gold. So yes, the industry is changing. Is it changing fast enough? I was sitting in a shopping precinct in London the other day, and my BlackBerry made a noise, and I looked at it. I was early for a meeting, so I was sitting drinking coffee. I looked at it, and it came up and told me, in this precinct where you are, this special offer is on now. Wow. I was quite impressed with that. So I went away and looked what Groupon was all about. Since I hadn't actually registered for it, I went away and found out what it was all about. And you start to look at the power of a business like this, of a business which is offering reasons to people to go and trade. And ask yourself, how powerful is this for the automotive sector? You know, the average cost of getting a customer into a showroom is somewhere over £70. I was chatting to Terry, a mate of mine, at lunch, and we were saying, you know what, with this, a dealer could offer a free MOT. MOT is whatever it is, 40 odd quid. Free MOT. Come into the showroom, get a free MOT. Oh, and while you're getting the free MOT, boy, will we work hard to sell you a car. That's only 40 quid, not 70 quid, half your cost of doing business. But does the automotive sector get it? No, they don't. And when you look at this kind of alternative thinking, when you look at what's available, when you start asking yourself, wow, look at the valuations of these businesses, I can hear some of my old dealer principals saying, yeah, but, you know, it'll never catch on. No, It is the new reality. It is the new world. The reason why these valuations are there is because this is the community. This is the way of communicating with real buyers today. And you know, these are not fictional numbers. Here we are with Google. Valuation yesterday, $187 billion. Just announced earnings of $10 billion. This is not a dot-com boom, guys. This is not a bubble that's going to burst. This is the new reality. So how do we as an automotive industry use it? You can see when you see that SMMT statement why I got so frustrated that I walked out the door. So what do? Well, there are businesses out there who have thought about the world differently, who started from the consumer's end and looked back. This is the one I talked about we created 10 years ago. And what we did was we asked ourselves, in this motor industry, what is it, where are there huge costs that we could replace with a process? And we recognized in the fleet sector, the company car sector, it was very inefficient. So we looked at it from the consumer perspective. We created a service, a support, and we called it OneLink. The business is called Epics. We call the service OneLink, and we put that into the market. Today, this business, I don't know, I've been out of there now for 18 months, whatever it is, but today, this business is somewhere over 90% market penetration in that space. It just owns the market. It's fantastic. So where's the next one? Why can the motor industry not see that if they stood back and looked at the retail processes that exist, the opportunities are out there to make it happen? This is another business that I've been quite actively involved in. I would say, normally it was started by two bright guys, but since they're sitting in the room, I won't say that. Started by two nice guys. And what they did was look at the world from the consumer perspective. They looked at the retail processes within the motor industry from a consumer perspective. And they said, you know what? If we can integrate, if we can converge all of these points of contact with a customer, then we can identify the people who want to buy a new car. And then if we can convince the manufacturers to use the platform to present their product offer to the consumer in a way that manages the brand, and manages the brand how the manufacturer wants it, then the two pieces meet and everyone lives happily ever after. 37,500 customers a month are going through this platform. The biggest problem we've got is convincing the dealers to complete the circle. Well, they're online customers. I don't want to really deal with them. They don't come in through the showroom door. No, forget it, guys. They are tomorrow's customer. Young people today, and some old people today, young people today don't want to come into a showroom. They will buy through the net. They will take delivery of your product and service through the net. Get with it. Understand it. Because by creating the kind of opportunities for the consumer to research, identify, select, and buy a car online, you create a whole new relationship. It's not rocket science. It's about changing the perception of the retail industry to use this technology, which is available today, to move on and take cost out of the system. So those are what I think are the principal drivers. It is the fact that the market is moving. The market's moving because there are too many cars. There's too much carbon. People want to drive smaller cars. People want to be able to select the car they drive in a more convenient way to them. The communication is available today. People want improved convenience, they want better service, they want better support. It's available today if we can converge all of the service and support through the internet. The great thing is, I'll apologize to ladies for this picture, only because you could have had it the other way around, because I meet as many ladies who love cars as I meet men who love cars. We have a sexy product. Cars are a sexy product. Still today, there are sexy. People are not so interested these days in the size of the engine, in horsepower, in this, that, and the other. They want to know different things about the car, the convenience, the luxury, the comfort, the safety, the ability of the car to service my lifestyle. But they're still sexy. And so I believe we still attract interesting people to our business. The trick is to give people a new way of thinking, to create a realism that it's not the big that'll beat the small in this world. It's the fast who'll beat the slow. And that opportunity is there to anybody who wants to come and look at the retail motor industry from a different perspective, who wants to come in and share the opportunities which exist. I've been lucky. I went out there and I was determined to make a difference in this industry, and I was lucky because I found my opportunity. But I would invite other people to come into the automotive retailing sector. It is great fun. Come with me, come and stand on the bleeding edge of technology and look over, because over that edge, there really are some green fields and some big consumer opportunities if you are prepared to innovate and use the technology which exists. I've had a lot of fun doing that. Been pleased to share that with you this afternoon. And if you have any questions, I'll happily take questions for 5 minutes. Thank you very much. Any questions? No?
Kevin?
I can't see you for the light, so... okay, gotcha.
You talk about potential, almost as if there's failure at some point in the market, as if some automotive companies could go bust if they don't get up to speed. Is that possible?
Yeah, go and ask TVR, go and ask... I mean, yes, companies can go bust. The frustration I have is that nobody seems to step outside the box and look at the automotive retailing sector from a different perspective. What tends to happen, in my experience, and I noticed that people here from manufacturers, I saw the badges earlier on, is there always seems to be, look, we've got this retailing asset, and what you have to do is help us to expand it by bolting new communication medium on the end of it. And I think that's suboptimal. I really do. 10 years ago, I challenged the BMW dealers, and I said, what are you guys going to do when Richard Branson turns up with a 3-cylinder Econobox and a whole new way of doing business? What are you going to do to compete with that? Because all you're doing, really, at the moment, is rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. What are you going to do when somebody turns up with a whole new retail model? And I don't think that question's yet been answered. I think the manufacturers are hanging on to the assets they have for completely understandable reasons. But I honestly believe that the consumer push now is so far. My kids are 23 and 20. They wouldn't dream of going in a car showroom. They wouldn't dream of it. They buy through the web. That's how they buy. Different perspective.
Do you think the Tesco might make an impact on the market, and what sort of impact that might be?
Well, the question is, could Tesco make an impact on the market? Well, Tesco, like a number of other major retail brands, look at this space, and look at this space frequently. If you compare return, I'm not a FMCG retailer, but if you compare return on a square foot of Tesco space to return on a square foot of Pendragon, largest dealer group in the UK, space, they're miles apart. And so for Tesco, the challenge would be, how do we get the revenue up to that level? It would also be, how do we source cars? Because at the moment, the way that the law is written and the way manufacturers operate is they're highly unlikely to sell cars through Tesco, because what that would do is undermine their local retails. For the reasons being, Tesco would have better retail processes, they would be better at looking after the consumer, and frankly, their fixed cost base would be lower. It'll happen. I remember 12 years ago somebody saying to me, at BMW, you can't sell direct to the fleets. We don't do that here. I said, well, hang on a minute. I'm a new kid on the block. I've just come in. You're selling 50% of your cars to the fleet. Yeah, but we don't tell anybody. What? Yeah, we don't tell anybody. Yeah, well, everybody knows. You're selling 50% of your cars to major fleets as company cars. So let's get real about it. Let's do it professionally. What we were able to do was professionalize that whole service and make it much more profitable. Now, we undermined some of our dealers. Yes, we did. But there comes a point when, what are you there to do as a manufacturer? Are you there to sell more cars, or are you there to make more profit? I would always argue you're there to make more profit, because ultimately you have to reinvest in technology because of the other demands on the, look at the planet's demands, guys. Stop building gas guzzler. You know, find me a way. Well, it doesn't come for free. Question here.
Hi, I'm Chris Green, actually a founder of motoring.co.uk. Just to reiterate something there, which
You need a microphone, Chris. We can't hear you.
just to reiterate something there, which is really interesting. You mentioned a number before of where we're actively engaging with, and this is very, very early start, 37,000 potential car buyers per month. That's obviously not just people on the site, it's a hell of a lot busier than that. But what we've actually done through the research and a data channel is actually started actively speaking to the consumers, so about getting a verified email address and a verified telephone number. We are actively speaking through our call centre over 1,000 potential car buyers per day. Do you know what the biggest response back is from those consumers?
Thank goodness I don't have to deal with a dealer.
Not quite, but nearly. The actual response back from the consumers is, I can't believe somebody has contacted me so quickly from the internet. And the response we're getting back is because they've not just been on motoring.co.uk, they've probably been on Auto Trader, they've probably been on a manufacturer's website, a dealer website, and the biggest response back from every single consumer is, I can't believe you've contacted me. I made 4 or 5 inquiries through dealers, other portals, and nobody's yet got back to me.
There you go. I told you, bright guys. See, they've used this to advertise their business. Nice one, Chris. I learn from you every day. Yeah.
Hello, can I ask you if any of the new startups, I'm thinking of some of the Californian car companies like Tesla or Fisker, and I suppose some of the Chinese companies, are they embracing this in a new way? Do you see anyone doing anything? You talk mostly about the old regime, really.
I haven't seen anybody come up. The question is, have I seen any of the new brands adopting a different route to market? Really, is that your question? I haven't seen anybody do it out and out. I was involved with one company who I worked with briefly where they were considering doing it. They're a brand you would know. They have a small-scale operation in the UK, Indian-based, and they were talking about not JLR, not Jaguar Land Rover, but they didn't follow through, and they're still very quiet. So I haven't seen anybody do it. Let somebody tell me if they've seen it, but I haven't seen anyone. Oh, sorry, there is one. They're an offshoot of one of the big brands. They only run in the States, and they've targeted a young audience, and I can't for the life of me think of their name. Scion. There you go. Scion seem to have got somewhere close to it. Okay. Time for one more question, apparently. So,
How do you see the consumer experience going after purchase?
how do I see the consumer experience going after purchase? I had my car serviced recently. Okay, it's an expensive car. I was quoted £400 for a service. And when they phoned me up and told me the bits and bobs were on, it's a 3-year-old car. They phoned me up and told me the bits and bobs they wanted to change on it. The bill was 7,000 quid. And I said to this guy, what do you think you've just done for my trust in your brand? And he didn't seem that bothered. Now, he didn't do the work, because I didn't want him to do the work. I don't think the car needs the work. But my glib answer is it can only get better. It can only get better. There has to be a better way of looking after vehicles, of servicing and supporting vehicles, than giving the consumer a shock and a surprise. Now, it's an expensive car. Okay, big deal. Bought myself a fancy car. But it's the shock and the surprise. It's the process of handling that's poor. And to be fair to a number of manufacturers, many have done this really quite nicely with a TLC package. You buy in. My wife runs a Volkswagen that has a similar kind of service and support. You buy into a service package, and then over the first 3 or 4 years of the life, theoretically, you don't have big shocks and surprises. And that's nice, and I think that's great. But I bet my bottom dollar that if somebody like Tesco were to get a hold of it, the experience would change. And I bet my bottom dollar they wouldn't be charging 125 or 150 pounds an hour labour rate, because that's bonkers. So I think there are huge opportunities for improvement. I know we're here. This is a conference about technology, but if you just go and look at some of the older established industries, companies in the automotive industry, things like QuickFit are now servicing a lot of fleet cars because they're much cheaper, and actually they can do the work. And actually there's stuff about, don't let anybody ever tell you your car has to be serviced by a franchise dealer for the warranty to be effective. That's nonsense. It's not true. So, sorry to the guys from the OEMs here, but it just has to change. People won't put up with it. And that's where I get frustrated. I get frustrated because not enough retailers are looking at it from the other end of the telescope, looking back and saying, how do I make this a better experience for the consumer? This is not about getting the customer to come to you. It's about taking your business to the customer. It's a different mindset. And that's where the automotive retail sector has to make the change. Okay? Okay, thank you very much for your time. I'm now going to hand over to Avinash from Google. Thank you very much.